I have learned that the most dangerous moment in any conflict is not always when one side loses strength. It is when the meaning of strength changes. The United States still has the stronger military that is not in doubt. It can fly aircraft over Iran. It can strike targets Iran cannot reach in return. It can destroy command centers, air defenses, radar sites, and infrastructure on a screen. That looks like dominance. But the world is not only watching screens, the world is also watching rooms. It is watching the United Nations. It is watching Moscow. It is watching Pakistan, China, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt push diplomacy. It is watching the White House discuss proposals it would have rejected instantly at the beginning of the war. And that is where the real story is. Iran has not defeated America militarily, but it has begun to turn the political meaning of the war against America. That is a different kind of victory, and often a more durable one. The clearest example came at the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Review process. Iran was elected to a leadership role despite objections from the United States, Britain, and Australia. Now, to many Americans, that sounds outrageous. Iran and nuclear non-proliferation in the same leadership sentence sounds like a contradiction. Washington argued exactly that. It said Iran had violated obligations, concealed activities, enriched uranium to dangerous levels, and refused to cooperate fully with international inspectors. That was the American case. But the outcome still went forward. That is the part that matters. America objected. Iran still received the position. The objection was recorded, but it did not stop the decision. That tells us something very important about the world Washington is operating in. Now, American outrage is no longer the same thing as international veto power. That does not mean America is weak. It means the room is less obedient than it used to be. Iran understood the opportunity immediately. It did not try to soften its tone to please Washington. It turned the accusation around. Iran said, if compliance with the treaty is the standard, then apply that standard to everyone. Apply it to the United States, the only country that has ever used nuclear weapons in war. Apply it to a country that continues to modernize its nuclear arsenal. Apply it to a country that withdrew from the nuclear deal. Apply it to a country that supports Israel, a nuclear armed state outside the NPT system. That is the important move. Iran did not try only to prove itself innocent. It tried to put the prosecutor on trial in law. That may not work in diplomacy. It often does, because diplomacy is not only about who has the cleanest hands, it is about who can make the audience doubt the person pointing the finger. If the room begins debating hypocrisy, the accusation loses some of its power. That is exactly what Iran wanted. It took the West's strongest argument that Iran cannot be trusted with nuclear issues and folded it into a larger argument that the West applies rules selectively. That message lands in many parts of the world because many countries already believe the international order is full of selective enforcement. They may not trust Iran, but they also do not fully trust Washington. That space between distrust of Iran and distrust of America is where Iran is now operating. That was the first diplomatic signal. The second came from the negotiation track. Iran reportedly proposed reopening the Strait of Hormuz while leaving the nuclear issue for later on the surface. That sounds like a practical sequencing idea. Open the waterway, calm markets, lower pressure, then discuss the nuclear file afterward. But in negotiation, sequence is substance. Whoever controls the order controls the shape of the deal. America entered this war with the nuclear issue at the center. Iran's enrichment program was the reason, the justification, the red line. Washington wanted a settlement that could be presented as preventing Iran from becoming a nuclear weapons state. That means the nuclear file had to come first. Iran is trying to make Hormuz come first. That is not a detail. That is a reversal. If the nuclear file comes first, Iran is negotiating under maximum pressure on the issue America cares about most. If Hormuz comes first, America is negotiating under maximum pressure on the issue the global economy cares about most. Iran has found the difference between America's priority and the world's priority. America wants the nuclear file resolved. The world wants Hormuz reopened. Those are connected, but they are not identical. Iran's move is to separate them. That creates a trap. If Washington says no, then Iran can argue that America is prolonging the crisis because it refuses to accept a practical reopening of the strait. If Washington says yes, then it has allowed Iran to postpone the central issue that started the war. If Washington says it is only discussing the idea, that alone shows the old red line has been softened by circumstances. That is why the White House response mattered. It did not simply crush the proposal in public. It acknowledged discussion around the issue. That does not mean acceptance, but it does mean the proposal was not treated as irrelevant. In diplomacy, consideration is a form of recognition, and Iran wanted recognition. It wanted the world to see that the nuclear issue can be moved to later if Hormuz pressure becomes large enough. It wanted the world to see that American red lines can be rearranged when oil, shipping, allies, and inflation push hard enough. That is leverage. Not military leverage, economic leverage, geographic leverage, political leverage. A strong country that cannot solve the urgent problem must talk to the weaker country that is what is happening. Then came Russia. Iran's foreign minister went to Moscow. Putin praised the Iranian people's courage and commitment to independence. Those words will not repair a radar station. They will not rebuild an air defense system. But they serve a different purpose. They tell Iran that it is not alone. They tell Washington that isolation has limits. They tell the non-aligned world that great powers outside the American camp are willing to receive Iran publicly even after the war. This is how diplomatic armor is built, not with one alliance, but with many partial shields. One shield at the UN, one shield from Russia, one shield from China, one shield from regional mediators, one shield from Gulf states that may dislike Iran, but fear economic chaos even more. Together, those shields make it harder for America to force the simple outcome it promised. That is why this week matters. It is not because Iran suddenly became more powerful than America. It did not. It is because Iran showed that damage and defeat are not the same thing. A country can be damaged and still have leverage. A company can lose a lawsuit and still own the asset everyone needs. A man can be wounded and still hold the key to the only door in the room. Iran's key is Hormuz. And because Hormuz touches the global economy, Iran's key is not only useful against America, it is useful against everyone who wants this crisis over. That changes the negotiation at the beginning of a war. The stronger side often believes time is on its side. It believes more pressure will produce more concessions. But if the weaker side can impose costs on the wider system, time can shift. Every day, Hormuz remains uncertain. Every government imports energy becomes more impatient. Every business facing higher fuel costs becomes more nervous. Every voter seeing prices rise becomes more angry. Every ally exposed to regional danger wants the crisis reduced. Every mediator gains importance. Iran does not need the world to love it. It only needs the world to want relief badly enough. That is the dirty secret of leverage. You do not always need friends. Sometimes you only need a problem that everyone wants solved. Iran has become the owner of that problem. So when people say Trump is cornered, the phrase should be understood carefully. He is not cornered because America has no power. He is cornered because every use of power still leaves the main problem alive. Strike Iran, and Hormuz can remain unstable. Condemn Iran, and the non-aligned world may not follow. Reject Iran's proposal, and oil pressure continues. Accept Iran's proposal, and the nuclear issue is delayed. Escalate, and the war may widen, de-escalate. And Iran may claim it forced the sequence. That is the corner. It is not the absence of options. It is the presence of only ugly ones in investing. I always prefer situations where time is my friend. If every day that passes improves my position, I can afford patience. If every day that passes worsens my position, I am not investing, I am bleeding. That is Washington's difficulty. Now, Iran believes time is no longer purely on America's side. The longer the crisis continues, the more pressure builds on energy markets, regional allies, and the American political calendar. The longer Iran survives, the harder it becomes to sell the war as a clean victory. The longer negotiations revolve around Hormuz, the further the conversation moves away from America's original nuclear script. This is why the moment, the Hormuz proposal, and the Moscow visit belong in the same story. They are not separate headlines. They are three pieces of the same strategy. First, Iran preserves diplomatic standing. Second, Iran changes the sequence of negotiations. Third, Iran displays great power backing. That combination turns survival into leverage, and once survival becomes leverage, the stronger side has a problem. America can still win many tactical contests. It can still impose costs. It can still threaten more force. But the strategic question is different. Can it still force Iran to accept an outcome that looks like American victory? That question is no longer easy. The great mistake leaders make is assuming that destroying things is the same as persuading people. It is not destruction changes capacity. Leverage changes decisions. America has reduced some of Iran's capacity. Iran is trying to change America's decision. That is the contest now. And in that contest, the most important battlefield may not be above Tehran or along the Gulf. It may be the order of the agenda. It may be the language of a press briefing. It may be whether Hormuz is discussed before uranium. It may be whether the world treats Iran as isolated or as a necessary party to de-escalation. Those things sound small next to bombs. They are not small. Many wars are decided after the shooting starts to matter less than the settlement. When that moment arrives, the question becomes who can turn pain into terms. Iran is trying to turn pain into terms. America is trying to turn power into submission. This week showed that power has not yet become submission. That is why the story is bigger than one UN vote, one proposal, or one meeting in Moscow. It is a warning that Washington may have won many of the visible contests while losing control of the invisible one. The invisible contest is legitimacy. Who gets to define the crisis? Who gets to decide what must be solved first? Who gets treated as the obstacle? And who gets treated as the necessary partner? At the beginning, America wanted those answers to be obvious. Iran is making them disputed, and once the answers become disputed, the war becomes much harder to end on American terms.